Humans have long dreamed of traveling through time, perhaps to revisit one's own past, to experience life in different eras, or to try changing the course of history. Before the Victorian period, time travel methods often involved dreams or the supernatural. It wasn't until after Herbert George Wells published his first novel in 1895 that the concept of time travel by mechanical means became part of the popular imagination. The Time Machine was one of the earliest works of science fiction, and has been called the progenitor of today's time travel subgenre. Throughout fiction and film, time travel has served as a plot device through which one can explore the nature of humanity and its relationships with technology. The Time Machine has inspired countless derivative works, as well as news stories. In terms of strict adaptations, there are 2 notable film versions so far that follow the adventures of the time traveler to the year 802,701. This is The Time Machine by The Book.
Had man finally learned to control both the elements and himself? I had to stop and find out.
The 1960 adaptation was directed and produced by George Pal, who years earlier had adapted War of the Worlds, also written by Wells. The Time Machine maintains the frame narrative structure from the novel by using voiceover narration throughout the film. The narrator character is more or less a stand-in for the reader, and in the novel, he, like most of the other dinner guests, goes unnamed. In Chapter 12, the time traveler mentions seeing Hillier for a moment, but it isn't explicitly stated if Hillier is the narrator. Besides another character named Philby, the others are simply referred to as the psychologist, a very young man, the provincial mayor, the medical man, the editor, the journalist, and the silent man. In the film, however, names are given to all of the guests that arrive at the dinner party, as well as the time traveler himself. The design of the time machine goes according to what is described in the book, but the time traveler's journey is updated according to contemporary knowledge. For instance, on the way to the distant future, the time traveler sees the major world events leading up to World War II. Then, in 1966, an atomic blast destroys the city, a reflection of atomic fears during the Cold War arms race. It isn't until halfway through the film that the time traveler finally makes it to the year 802,701. As in the book, he saves Weena from drowning, and learns about the helpless, childlike Eloy, beautiful by classic Hollywood standards. The Morlocks are discovered to be cannibalistic, ape-like people. The novel describes them as having dull, white skin, large, grayish-red eyes, and flaxen hair on his head and down his back. The main difference in this version involves the ending, which is fairly pessimistic and ambiguous in the book. In the film, the time traveler is able to save Weena and the other Eloy people by inspiring them to defend themselves. Although he returns home to recount his story, he leaves that night, presumably returning to Weena and to help rebuild civilization. The 2002 film was directed by Simon Wells, the great-grandson of the original author. This version is portrayed as an adaptation of The Time Machine, but at the same time taking place in a universe where H.G. Wells' novel also exists. It makes several drastic changes to the storyline and characters for a narrative that focuses more on the adventure aspect. The time traveler, now named Alexander Hartigan, is a scientist and professor in New York City. When his fiancée is killed on the very night that he proposes, Alexander is determined to travel back in time to save her. He completes the machine and travels back to 1899 to prevent her murder, only to see her killed again in an accident, raising questions about temporal paradoxes and causal loops. In search for answers, Alexander travels to the year 2030, then 2037, after which he is knocked unconscious and unintentionally travels to the year 802,701 before reawakening. The Eloy in this movie are far from being the useless, passive people described in the book. They are clearly industrious, albeit living a more primitive lifestyle. The character of Weena is found in two new characters, Mara, the love interest, and her younger brother. After the Eloi are attacked and Mara is dragged underground, Alexander meets an Uber-Morlock, who is part of a group of telepaths. In this version, Hartigan utilizes the time machine as a weapon to destroy the entire Morlock race. At the end, Alexander decides to begin a new life with Marla and the Eloi, never returning to his own time. Over the past century, notions of time travel have certainly taken on a more scientific approach, thanks to H.G. Wells. The Time Machine ultimately reveals a future that symbolizes Wells' observations on the class system and utopian ideals. Each film's depiction distinctly reflects their respective eras, but also shares similarities. Both include some form of advanced technology that is able to answer the time traveler's questions. In the 1960 film, for instance, there are talking rings. In the 2002 film, we have a holographic librarian, and later the Uber-Morlock who explains how time works. None of these exist in the book. In fact, Wells specifically explores the idea of human intellect regressing. So in the novel, the time traveler comes across the ruins of a museum with decaying vestiges of books. His theories about the Eloi and Morlocks are based on hypotheses and conclusions drawn by the time traveler himself. On the other hand, the films choose to take a more optimistic view of the future, with a focus on romance, the age-old battle between good and evil, and the desire for second chances in life.